you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Yes, we hear you.
So today it's going to be two of us. It's going to be me and my colleague, Nikolai. So let me just go ahead and share my screen first. Alrighty. Let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Can see it.
All right, perfect. All right, good morning, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. So just to give you guys a little backstory, we're a group of coworkers. Very recently, we hired our company hired a new coworker. She's Ukrainian, and it just happened to coincide with this huge world event that's going on, and it's affecting her country, right? In the process of breaking the ice and getting to know each other, we realized just how vital getting information, getting news sources, and just getting the proper knowledge of what is going on, how important that is, just to get a better scope of what is going on, and fight a lot of these issues that we're facing, right? So this was sort of our core motivation of building this. So I'm going to give a sort of a live demo of sort of what we decided to do. So in short, there's so much information out there, and we decided that data visualization is one way to make it easier for the user, right? It just makes it a lot easier for the user to comprehend and get a better understanding of a news source. We just like it better. So one way of doing that is through a map. So right off the bat, we decided to create a map where the user, and we've limited the map to just Ukraine. We actually even gave the geocoding. So if the user were to click this and they were located in Ukraine, it would actually go to where they are located. And as they scroll through the map, they would be updated with news sources in that area. So as you guys can see, there is as you scroll through the map, you will get news for that area. So this does not limit it to Kyiv. So if you actually, let's say we go to Lviv, and I'll go zoom faster. So you will get updated news for that location, and the user will be able to then click on this and read said article. So the technologies we use for this one, we basically use PostgreSQL on the back end. We used PHP and Laravel in the middle tier. And then we use Next.js and React for the front end. We use Mapbox as our mapping library. We use Material UI for the styling. Obviously we only had 2 days to work on this. So amongst the other things we wanted to work on was Twitter integration. So we did manage to get the Twitter integration going, but Twitter API is very tricky. They sort of limit the amount of requests we can make, right? But our idea was to actually be able to click on one of these pointers and then be able to actually create a separate section here where we would get tweets for that area, whether trending tweets in that area, and show it along with the news source. And sort of the other thing, again, we only had 2 days, unfortunately, but the other thing we had the idea of doing was create a sort of algorithm of sorts where depending on the tweet that shows up and if it matches a set keyword, then match that to a charity of sorts where the user would then be able to donate. anyway, with that in mind, we would like to show a little bit more stuff on the back end because we did focus a lot on that. So I think I will pass this to Nikolai for the remaining amount of time.
Got about a minute left here.
Okay. Or not, Nikolai.
I can see the screen being shared. I just don't hear him. All right, looks like it's time. I'll give. Is Nikolai ready? I'm happy to give a few more seconds here.
Yeah, I think he might have disconnected.
All right, no worries. Thank you, team. Do we have any questions from the judges here?
Thank you, Team Scrappy. Could you bring back the website on the wall?
Excuse me, can you repeat that question?
Could you bring back the website on the wall?
Oh, okay, for sure. I only see I don't know if somebody's sharing their screen at the moment. Or can't seem to be able to. Oh, there we go.
Cool.
That was fast.
Are you guys seeing my screen right now?
Yeah, I can see the map.
All right, perfect.
Okay, cool. So, is this news articles, geolocated news articles on the map as pins?
No, so that was the idea. That was what we were thinking. Again, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time, but we were thinking of doing that. So, the idea with the pins was that we were going to be able to click on them. And depending on the pin, the way the API works is it creates a latitude and longitude, right? And then we would be able to convert that on the back end. We created a function on the back end, which basically that would turn that latitude and longitude into sort of a radius of sorts. I don't know. Unfortunately, my colleagues are a little more well versed in the back end stuff, but then we would then match that with a database of cities in Ukraine. And then depending on how close it is to that city, depending on a certain mile range, we would then show the topics for the trending topics for that city in the top tweets. The way the Twitter's API is pretty extensive, actually. Again, it's unfortunate that we didn't have enough time, but it is very extensive, and they do have the ability to show tweets and trending topics for even just the smallest portions. Like, for example, Kyiv, even like the greater city area, or whatever is the proper term to call it. But even these little towns, like, there is the ability to get those tweets for that area. So right now, what we just basically did was we created a scraper of sorts where what we did was to scrape data out of major news sites, trusted news sites in Ukraine, and these do update whenever these websites actually post new articles. So then depending on the location, we get different news for that. So obviously it's a work in progress. Like, for example, if we go here, this has only been, it's in its infancy, right? So we don't really have much data to work in right now. But, in theory, I think it's not working now, but, if we were to go here, it would show very local. I think my internet is just going crazy right now.
Okay, so we'd like to filter news by location. Alright, so you're scraping news and you would like to filter them by location. Now, is there like a particular part of the internet you'd like to focus on? Because you mentioned like tweets, websites. What do you think matters more?
Well, I think again, this is sort of in its infancy. I think the idea we were trying to do was both inform and provide the ability to help users, right? So, it's not just enough to inform people; it's the ability to help, right? Because one thing we notice is that people want to be informed of what is going on, and then the next question they ask themselves is, "How can we help?" Right? So the first step was just providing a news source, and for a lot of us who are not familiar with Ukraine, right? A lot of this seems to be alien to us. I mean, I can assure you that for a lot of people, Kyiv is something they did not know maybe 2 months ago. They didn't even know this existed, right? So there are all these buzzwords, and people want to stay informed. Like, Lviv, right? Like nobody knew that was Western Ukraine until 2 months ago, right? So little things like that, people take interest, and then again, the next question they ask themselves is, how can we help? And sort of we wanted to bridge those two things together, where we wanted to show news source for the user, and then provide, match that with said charity. For example, if there is an article about pets, right? Then we would have an array of charities with pets, right? And depending on that matching keyword, then we would match that to said charity, and then that we would provide the user with a direct link to where they can go to that website and donate. So that was sort of the idea we had. Of course, this takes time, right?
Okay, yeah, I love this idea. Like bridging news to a particular call to action for someone that's far away. And like if you see pets and you care about pets, and right now I can send you like tons of videos of dead dogs. Yeah. So being able to help through like having an emotional reaction by just getting like a list of like to click on this something, like that really clicks with me. So I really love this idea. I think you're on the right track here. My last question would be like, would you match charities to events? Like, where would you get like list of charities? Because this sounds like a project on its own. You've done an amazing job of spreading news. So now the charities sounds like that.
Yes, that's sort of what we decided we were going to end up doing. The really beautiful thing about this is there's just so many resources out there, right? For a lot of us who are not as news inclined, we have to be cautious sometimes, right? Because there's so much news misinformation out there, quote unquote fake news and stuff like that. So, but there's just so many resources out there. I mean, like you said, when you want to help out a charity for pets, right? I mean, odds are that this is legit, right? So we were going to make research and look for these, just like we did with a lot of these news sources. So that was sort of our plan. That's what we had in mind. It's challenging, right? We just didn't have enough time, but we sort of visualized it that way. And even with Twitter, right? So we actually managed to get this up and host it, but the Twitter API is just so difficult to deal with. They just give you so many constraints unless you're a paying customer. But just little things like that, little challenges like that. But to answer your question, yes, we were going to end up doing research and perhaps again, my colleagues are more well versed on the back end, but I think we wanted to maybe create a small database with the data set of just charities and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because for context, well, if I have like $1,000 a month to spend on charities, I could shove it down to the National Bank of Ukraine, like the largest charity that does equipment for soldiers. But there are a lot of really small volunteer groups who are taking care of a particular purpose, like that, or musicians in Lviv, or somebody needs like night vision goggles in Khmelnytsky. These are all like real people who wear $100 So the targeted ability to send help is very important. Thank you.
Yeah, but very much in agreement. I love the idea of being able to locate things spatially. I think it's very clever to use netbox. It gives you a lot of great functionality right out of the box. So, great concept. I also really like the idea of sending this to sort of a who needs what, who has what functionality. That's really cool. I had a question about the news. I know you mentioned that you were scraping websites. How do you decide which websites to scrape? How do you add new websites if information comes up about certain websites putting out information that's incorrect? How do you remove those? It seems like that itself is a bit of a challenge. I'm kind of curious to know what your approach to that was.
Yeah, that can be challenging. I'm curious. Can other colleagues jump in at any time, or does it have to be me answering the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Hello. Go for it, Nico. Or-
Make sure you're on speaker.
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry about that. Hello, I'm Nikolai. I was unfortunate that didn't work on my end, but yeah, I can answer that question. So for now, we just really, Google, Ukrainian news channel that, looks authenticate or looks, verified or trustworthy, and we just put that in the scraper. And how we scrape that is we just go for links, and, per element of the documentary in the web page. So it differs for every news site, and we would have to have a manual way of just making sure that every data that we scrape on those websites are actually correct and on the right documentary.
I heard that we're trying to use a Twitter API and we're running into some garden issues in real life and also run into those. I'm wondering, do you think there's a clever way to scrape that or any kind of workaround, or is Twitter a bit of a dead end as a result?
yes, I can respond that. So for the Twitter API, we faced two problems. The first one was technically the keys, the keywords, basically the operators that are compatible with the version of the Twitter API. They only provide functionality for premium users. Of course, because we didn't have enough time, or we didn't want to pay for the whole premium account. We can just use it for certain operators instead of the full API. And the other thing, it's basically they cap the amount of requests that you can do per minute or per certain period of time, right? So what we did was, instead of doing requests every single time, because it's a great effort for the server to try to get that data every time that a user go to the website, we are using Redis to cache those tweets. So every 15 minutes, you will see that the tweets will change, because instead of retrieving the data every single time, we are caching those tweets. Actually, I don't know if Rafael can enable the feature, but I think so. It should be working right now.
Excellent.